So we've all been there. It's ninth grade English and you're reading Shakespeare for the first time and you're sitting there and you're wondering, this isn't making any sense. And you're sitting there and you're wondering like, well, why isn't it making any sense? And you're like, he's a poet, so he has to make sense. He has to rhyme his words. And like, these are the rhymes for sonnet number 116 and you're looking at it and you're like, well, it's not rhyming. It's not making any sense. Like the dude rhymed proved and loved and they don't make sense. And you're just like, why doesn't he make any sense? Well, I'll tell you what. So what actually happened was the pronunciation of these words just changed. To Shakespeare, all of his words rhymed. And it's because of these pronunciation changes that we actually lose a lot of puns and wordplay in Shakespeare's works. If you want to know why come and doomed used to rhyme like for part 2. Alright, TikTok, how did Shakespeare's pronunciation change? It's quite simple. From around 1350 to 1700, there was this phenomenon in the English language that was called the Great Vowel Shift. Basically, Middle English had 7 long vowel sounds. I am by no means a linguist, and I'm going to completely butcher these sounds, but we have E, A, A, ow, oo, o. FYI, if you want to know how to read that chart over there, the top corner is your top front teeth, and the back corner is your back throat. So what happened during the Great Vowel Shift was the top 2 vowels shifted and became diphthongs, and everything else shifted upwards to take its spot. How we know this happened was mostly through correspondence, rhymes, and everyone just complaining about the spellings at the time. If you want to know why the Great Vowel Shift happened, like for part 3. Alright, TikTok, so we know what the Great Vowel Shift was, but honestly why it happened is so much cooler. So most Middle English speakers never really traveled more than a few miles from their home, meaning they didn't hear other people speak their language, and so people in southern England couldn't really understand people in northern England even though they were speaking the same language. Then in 1347 came the Black Death and people were like, job security. And so they started migrating from the countryside to the cities and came into contact with the nobility more, and so they started speaking like the nobility. This meant that they were speaking English with a thick French accent trying to sound like their Norman ruler. Also at this time, England started losing the 100 Years' War and people were like, how do we boost the war effort? And so the nobility started taking into their English heritage and started speaking English like the lower classes. This meant that the lower classes were trying to sound like the upper classes, and the upper classes were trying to sound like the lower classes, meaning that there was no pitch reference for the language. All while people were moving all over the country. If you want to see an example of this, look for part 4. Alright, TikTok, so we know what and why the Great Vowel Shift is, and now it's time for an example. I just want to go ahead and preface this by saying that I am by no means a linguist, and I'm going to butcher this really, really bad. By the way, I'm using Genesis 1:3 as an example for this. What the hell? Alright, so this is from Alfric in the 11th century. We have God coerth, the goerth, et let worth goerth. It doesn't get any better, it just keeps getting worse. Next up we have my boy John Wycliffe from the 1380s, right at the beginning of the Great Vowel Shift. So we have, and God said, lecta be mad, and lecta was mad. Now we have King James, this is right towards the end of the Great Vowel Shift. This one's actually going to sound pretty close to how we say it today. So we have, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So that's about 500 years of language change, like for part 5, I think? I'm not too sure to see how Shakespeare fits into this. Alright, TikTok, so how does Shakespeare kind of fit into the Great Vowel Shift? He kind of does a lot. You see, Shakespeare was kind of writing in a time when spelling wasn't really standardized and neither was pronunciation. Like his actors were coming from all over the place. At the same time, his actors didn't need to have their scripts. They didn't have the script, so they couldn't really read it. It wasn't written down until after he died, for the most part. Kind of also between you and me, a lot of the comedy in these plays came from the wordplay because you couldn't really get a good view of the stage sometimes. So at a time when nothing was really standardized, Shakespeare was just kind of going with the flow, as we might say. And then after he died, things were written down and the pronunciation still kind of changed a little bit. And, you know, eventually the spelling became standardized and now we just kind of have this shit show, more or less, of the English language. It's kind of sad, but if you want to see some of these puns in action, like for more parts. Shakespeare puns on my college campus because it's pretty. Part 1. This is from As You Like It, Act 2, Scene 7.
It is 10 o'clock. Thus we may see, quoth he, how the world wags. 'Tis but an hour ago since it was 9, and after 1 hour more 'twill be 11. And so from hour to hour we ripe and ripe, and then from hour to hour we rot and rot, and thereby hangs a tale.
But where's the meme? See, in Shakespeare's day, hour was pronounced or, and whore was pronounced or.
It is 10 o'clock. Thus we may see, quoth he, how the world wags. 'Tis but an hour ago since it was 9, and after un hour more 'twill be 11, and so from hour to hour we ripe and ripe, and then from hour to hour we rot and rot, and thereby hangs a tale.
See? Now it's a meme. Like for more puns. Shakespeare puns on my college campus because it's pretty. Part 2. This is from the big daddy of them all, the prologue of Romeo and Juliet.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal lines of these two foes.
Did you catch it? See, today we say lines, but in Shakespeare's day, lines and loins were pronounced the same.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes.
See, now we know that Romeo and Juliet's demise are caused by both their lineages and their desires. Like for more funny puns, Shakespeare puns on my campus because it's pretty. Part 3. Also, just like how pretty that house is. This is from Love, Labor's Lost, Act 4, Scene 1.
Who's the suitor? Who's the suitor?
Shall I teach you to know?
I, my continent of beauty.
Why she that bears the bow, finally put off.
My lady goes to kill horns, but, if thou marry, hang me by my neck. If horns that year miscarry, finally put on.
Well then I am the shooter.
And who is your dear?
If we choose by the horns yourself, come not near. Finally put on indeed.
See, it's supposed to be funny because shooter and suitor are supposed to be pronounced the same in Shakespeare's day.
Who's the shooter? Who's the shooter?
Shall I teach you to know?
I, my continent of beauty.
Why she that bears the bow, finally put off.
My lady goes to kill horns, but, if thou marry, hang me by my neck. If horns that year miscarry, finally put on.
Well then I am the shooter.
See, it's funny because it's a deer hunt and a marriage put together. Alright, TikTok, I just wanted to say thanks if you liked that, but also, you know, that was for a theater project for my history class, so, there's my works cited for it. Look how pretty it looks. It's all right there. This is just kind of, you know, a hashtag. I know how to use my resources available during a major historical event, but also, you know, won't be sending her a nice one, but I also just wanted to give it to you guys so that way you know where I got my information from, so that way you know I'm not making all this stuff up. Anyway, bye.